My fiancée laughed about cheating and controlling me. I let her dig her own grave, then cut her off cold and watched her life implode. Sup Reddit. This is a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I was engaged until I heard her mocking me in front of her friends at our engagement party, bragging about using me. I stared at her for a few seconds, then left without a word. She had 30 days to stay. I made sure every one of them felt like a year. Here's how it went down. I'm a 36-year-old male and was engaged to Tiffany, a 32-year-old female. We'd been together for nearly 6 years. I run my own contracting business that I built from nothing after dropping out of college. I started with just me and a truck. Now I have 14 guys working for me, and we handle mid-sized commercial renovations across 3 counties. It's not glamorous work, but I make solid money, and I'm my own boss. Tiffany works as a marketing director at some agency with all these corporate types. When we met through my cousin's barbecue, she seemed fascinated that I worked with my hands, calling it refreshing compared to the soft office guys she usually dated. I should have realized I was a novelty to her. Tiffany was trophy girlfriend material, the kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room with designer clothes, perfect hair, the whole package. Now I realize I was so caught up in feeling lucky that I missed what was actually happening. I was being evaluated as an investment opportunity, not a partner. About 2 years in, I noticed she started suggesting changes. Small stuff at first. My clothes weren't right for dinners with her work friends. My truck was too contractor-ish when we went to certain neighborhoods. We moved in together after 3 years. The house is mine. I bought it as a foreclosure and renovated it myself before we even met. When she moved in, suddenly everything needed upgrading. The kitchen wasn't entertainer-friendly. The master bath needed marble. I gave in more than I should have, dropping nearly $80,000 on renovations to make it our space. What kills me now is remembering how she'd bring her work friends over for dinner parties and give them tours of the renovations as if she designed them herself. We decided on Carrara marble for the countertops, she'd say, when in reality we meant she demanded, and I paid for it. My buddy Drake, who's been with me since day one of the business, warned me. She's trying to upgrade you like one of her projects, he said after meeting her the 3rd time. I wrote him off as being paranoid. Drake noticed things I was blind to, like how Tiffany would physically position herself between me and anyone important at social gatherings, ready to jump in if I said something that wasn't polished enough for her crowd. I proposed last summer after taking her to Cancun. I dropped $7,500 on the trip and another $12,000 on the ring she'd been casually showing me for months. Fast forward to last month, I'd been planning our engagement party for weeks. I rented out the entire upstairs at Marcello's, that fancy Italian place downtown, hired a live band that played all her favorite songs, and had this elaborate multi-course meal planned. It cost me close to $11,000 all in, but I wanted her to have the perfect night. Tiffany insisted on approving every detail, but contributed exactly $0 to the event. When I suggested we split the cost, she laughed and said, "But you're the one with the successful business." Never mind that her marketing director salary at a prestigious firm was actually higher than what I was taking home after reinvesting in my company. The party was in full swing. I was talking with my brother Tony and Drake by the bar when Drake nudged me. "Your girl's getting pretty animated over there," he said. I looked over and saw Tiffany with her 3 work friends, huddled in the corner. They were halfway hidden by one of those ridiculous ice sculptures she just had to have, but I could still see them clearly from my angle. They hadn't noticed me watching. "I mean, he's stable and dependable," Tiffany was saying. "The business actually makes decent money, enough for that vacation property in Aspen next year." The whole contractor thing was cute at first, but God, he's so out of place at company events. Her friend Heather laughed. "At least he's good looking. My husband's going bald and getting a gut." "Yeah, there's that." Tiffany sighed. "But seriously, the other day, one of the VPs at work asked what Damien did, and I just said he's in construction management. I couldn't bring myself to say he's basically just a glorified handyman. You should have seen him trying to talk to my boss at the Christmas party. It was like watching a child try to sit at the adults' table." They all started cackling, and her friend Ashley chimed in. "But at least you got the Ringodian system you wanted. That thing must have cost him a fortune, 3 months of his income, as it should be." Tiffany smirked. "Though it's funny, he thinks I'm with him for his ambition. Meanwhile, I've got Bradley from legal texting me every weekend, wondering when I'm going to come to my senses." "You're terrible," Ashley giggled. I'm practical, Tiffany replied. Damien's easy to manage. He thinks he scored way above his league, so he'll do literally anything to keep me happy. Watch this. She turned, pretending to scan the room for me. I swear he follows me around like a dog, so desperate for approval. It's almost sad. That's when our eyes met. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she was going to pass out. Her friends followed her gaze and saw me standing there, just staring, with Drake and Tony flanking me like bodyguards. I didn't say a word, just looked at her for about 5 long seconds, then turned and walked straight toward the exit. Damien, wait, she called, catching up to me at the coat check. Baby, they were just joking around. You know how girls get when we're drinking. I looked at her with zero expression. Go back to your friends. Sounds like you were having fun explaining what a joke I am. Then I walked out into the cold February night. Behind me she was calling my name, but I just kept walking to my truck. As I pulled away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, standing in the parking lot in her $1,000 dress, mascara starting to run. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone had blown up with texts and voicemails from Tiffany. I didn't read or listen to any of them. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and started planning. First, I checked all our financial connections. A joint credit card, thankfully, she was just an authorized user. The vacation house down payment fund. A separate account but in both names. Our shared phone, plan, and her car that I'd co-signed for because her credit was temporarily messed up, which I later learned meant she had $38,000 in credit card debt when we met. What most guys miss in these situations is the legal angle. I'd seen enough messy breakups among my crew to know that engaged couples have different legal standing in different states. In ours, engagement rings are considered conditional gifts. If the wedding doesn't happen, the ring goes back to the purchaser. The law was on my side there, but I needed to be careful about the co-signed car loan and joint accounts. I spent the next 3 hours methodically untangling our financial lives. I called the bank's 24-hour line to remove her as an authorized user on my main card, changed all my passwords, moved my half of the vacation fund to a new account, and drafted an email to my lawyer Steve about the legal implications of breaking an engagement in our state. It was around 1 o'clock in the morning when I heard her key in the lock. I was sitting at the kitchen island, laptop open, looking as calm as I've ever been. She burst in with makeup streaks down her face. How could you just leave like that? Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? Everyone was asking questions. I had to make up some story about your crew having an emergency at a job site. I just looked at her silently for a moment, then said in an even tone, "We're done. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live and get your stuff out of my house." What? Over some stupid girl talk? Are you kidding me? Her voice went up an octave. It's over, Tiffany. I'm not discussing it. Her entire demeanor changed instantly, like flipping a switch from rage to tearful pleading. Baby, please. You know I didn't mean any of that. I was just trying to sound cool for the girls. You know how competitive Heather is about everything. I closed my laptop and stood up. 30 days. I'll sleep in the guest room. I'll pay the utilities as usual, but everything else, your car payment, your credit cards, your $400 monthly wellness membership, that's all on you now. Where are you going? She demanded as I walked upstairs to grab some clothes. I drove to Drake's place. When I showed up at 2 o'clock in the morning, he just handed me a drink and fired up the Xbox. We played Madden until sunrise, just like in the old days before Tiffany started making comments about how men who play video games past 30 are avoiding adulthood. Drake didn't ask for details, which was exactly what I needed, just the quiet understanding of someone who gets that sometimes a man needs space to process before he's ready to talk. By the time the sun came up, I had decided on my next moves. The next morning, calls started coming in from her parents. Her dad, Joe, is this corporate lawyer type who's always treated me with barely concealed condescension. The kind of guy who asks what kind of little business I run every time we meet, as if he can't remember that I employ over a dozen people and handle million-dollar projects. I picked up out of pure morbid curiosity. Damien, it's Joe. Kathleen's here too. We understand there was some unpleasantness last night. I let him talk for a solid 7 minutes about youthful indiscretions, and how Tiffany has always had a flair for the dramatic, and how I was taking a private comment out of context. What he really meant was, our daughter needs your financial support, so get back in line. Joe had been banking on me as the solution to Tiffany's spending habits since our second year together. I'd overheard him once telling her that she'd finally found someone with a practical mind about money, meaning someone who would pay her bills. When he finally shut up, I just said, "Joe, I heard your daughter loud and clear. She has 30 days to move out. I hope we can keep this civil." Then her mom got on the phone with the waterworks, talking about how Tiffany was just so devastated and had cried all night. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this," I told Kathleen, "but this isn't a misunderstanding. I heard exactly what she thinks of me." After I hung up, I blocked both their numbers. Then I drove to our main job site and buried myself in work. My foreman, Miguel, took one look at my face and knew something was off. "Engagement's done," was all I said. He just nodded and handed me a hammer. "Her loss, Jefe." Miguel had been with me almost as long as Drake. He'd started as a laborer and worked his way up to running entire job sites. The guy could frame a wall perfectly in the dark during a hurricane. More importantly, he knew when to talk and when to shut up. By lunchtime, the physical labor had cleared my head. I'd developed a new strategy: document everything. In construction, you learn that verbal agreements aren't worth the paper they're written on. Everything gets documented, photographed, and signed off on. I decided to apply the same principles to the breakup. I called Steve, the lawyer from the job trailer, and arranged to meet him that afternoon. I brought printouts of our financial entanglements, text messages where Tiffany had discussed our joint purchases, and a timeline of our relationship milestones. Steve was impressed with my preparation. "You're thinking clearly. That's rare in these situations," he said. By the end of our meeting, I had a clear legal strategy. Since we weren't married, the house was unquestionably mine. The joint savings account would be split based on contribution records I'd maintained. The engagement ring was legally mine to reclaim since she had broken the engagement through her actions. The only complicated part was the car loan, which would require her cooperation to resolve cleanly. When I got home that night, braced for World War II, the house was empty. Fine by me. I grabbed sheets for the guest room, took a shower, and crashed early. Tiffany came home around 1 o'clock in the morning, clearly wasted. I could hear her sobbing in the master bedroom, but I put in earbuds and went to sleep. The next few weeks went like this. I'd leave for work before she woke up, come home late, and completely ignore her existence. My buddy Tony dubbed it the shadow game. To me, she was nothing but a ghost haunting my house temporarily. Tony had gone through something similar with his ex-wife 3 years earlier. "The less you engage, the more it drives them crazy," he'd advised. "They're used to having emotional power over you. When that disappears, they don't know what to do." He was right. Tiffany tried everything to get a reaction. Crying jags that conveniently started whenever I entered a room, screaming matches where she was the only one screaming, walking around in lingerie that 6 months ago would have had me following her like a teenager. When none of that worked, she tried cooking elaborate dinners and talking about our future plans as if nothing had happened. I just heated up takeout and ate in the guest room or my home office. One night, she left a folder of vacation home listings on my desk with a note, "I'm still excited for our future together." I returned it to her with a single post-it. "Please don't leave your things in my office." The house had become a psychological battleground, and I was winning by refusing to fight. In construction, you learn that sometimes the smartest move is to just let gravity do the work. I applied the same principle here. I didn't need to push her away. I just had to remove my support and let her fall on her own. About 2 weeks in, her entire social circle started the assault. Texts came in telling me I was being childish and cruel. Her sister, Caroline, called to say she was worried about Tiffany's mental health. The only surprise was when her coworker Ashley texted to apologize, saying she'd always thought Tiffany treated me like an accessory rather than a partner. I actually called Ashley back. It turned out she'd been uncomfortable with Tiffany's attitude toward me for years, but had kept quiet to avoid workplace drama. "The way she talks about you when you're not around, it's like you're a project she's working on, not a person she loves," Ashley admitted. I should have said something sooner. That conversation confirmed what I already knew. I'd been a status symbol, not a partner. Then I did something that really got under Tiffany's skin. I started having people over. My crew would come by after work for sodas on the deck. My brother started coming for dinner. My business partner, Matt, and I would spread out plans for our new office building on the dining table that Tiffany had declared too nice for blueprints. And then there was Kate, my new project manager. She's 34, divorced, no kids, and absolutely brilliant with client management. Kate started coming by to review projects since my home office has better space than our job trailer. Tiffany never liked her from the one time they met at the company Christmas party, claiming Kate was inappropriately familiar with me. The reality was, Tiffany hated that Kate understood my business better than she ever bothered to learn. Kate didn't just understand my business, she respected it. Where Tiffany saw just construction, Kate saw the complexity in what we did. She asked intelligent questions about load calculations and material properties. She could read a blueprint as easily as a magazine. 3 weeks after the engagement party, Kate and I were reviewing some complicated blueprints at the dining room table. We were laughing about a ridiculous client request when Tiffany walked in from a girls' night that had clearly involved plenty of drinks. She took one look at us, heads bent close together over the plans, sharing an inside joke, and you could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. Without saying a word, she stormed upstairs. 2 minutes later, she came stomping back down and straight out the front door, slamming it so hard one of her precious decorative plates fell off the wall and shattered. She came back after midnight. "Are you sleeping with her in our bed?" She slurred as soon as she saw me. I looked up from my laptop. First, it's my bed in my house. Second, no, I'm not sleeping with Kate. And third, even if I was, it wouldn't be any of your business. 6 years together, and you're already moving on to that job-stealing witch? I shut my laptop. Focus on finding a new place, Tiffany. You've got 8 days left. I see how she looks at you with those desperate divorcee eyes, probably spreading her legs under the table while you're pretending to look at blueprints. Get some sleep. You're embarrassing yourself. That set her off on a screaming tirade that included every insecurity she thought I had. From my lack of education to my social awkwardness around her work friends. I just walked upstairs, locked myself in the guest room, and put on noise-canceling headphones. What she didn't understand was that after 6 years of her subtle put-downs, none of these insults landed anymore. I'd built a successful business without a college degree. My clients respected me. My crew respected me. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. I rushed downstairs to find Tiffany smashing framed photos of us against the kitchen counter. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked, which was the most emotion I'd shown in weeks. "Getting your attention," she screamed. Mascara streaked down her face despite it being 7 o'clock in the morning. "You can't just ice me out for weeks. We need to talk about this like adults." I looked at the mess of glass and broken frames. "I'll talk to you when you clean this up and calm down." "No, you'll talk to me now." She picked up another frame and hurled it at the wall. That's when I played my ace. I pulled out my phone, opened an app, and turned the screen toward her. On it was a bank account balance, specifically our vacation home down payment fund, except now it showed exactly half the previous balance. "What did you do?" she whispered, the color draining from her face. "I took my half," I said calmly. "The half I contributed. You can keep yours. But we need all of it for the down payment. We can't qualify for the loan without the full amount." Not my problem anymore. Her entire body seemed to deflate as the reality of the situation finally hit her. The Aspen vacation home she'd been bragging about to her friends for months was gone. The status symbol she'd been counting on had evaporated. What she didn't know was that I'd already spoken to the real estate agent and explained the situation. He had been sympathetic and returned my earnest money deposit without penalty. Tiffany had been CC'd on the email but clearly hadn't bothered to read it, too busy trying to manipulate me back into her control. "You can't do this," she said weakly. "Already did, and if you break one more thing in my house, I'll call the police and have you removed today, instead of letting you stay the full 30 days. She crumpled to the floor, sobbing for real this time. No theatrics, just the ugly cry of someone watching their plans disintegrate. I stepped around her and left for work. That day, I did something I should have done years earlier. I had a frank conversation with my business partner Matt about our growth strategy. For years, Tiffany had been pushing me to take on bigger commercial projects to increase our prestige, even though our profit margins were better on mid-sized jobs. Matt had been suggesting we focus on our strengths, but I'd been ignoring his advice to please Tiffany. "Let's refocus on what we do best," I told Matt over lunch. "No more chasing prestige projects. Let's build our reputation on quality and reliability instead." Matt smiled. "Welcome back, man. I've missed the old you." That night, when I came home, she was sitting calmly at the kitchen table. The broken glass and frames were cleaned up, She looked like she hadn't slept. "Can we please talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded and sat across from her. "I'm sorry," she said. "What I said at the party was awful. I was just showing off for my friends. You know how they are, always competing over who has the best life." "Here's what I know," I replied. "I heard exactly what you think of me when you don't think I'm listening. And I believe people when they tell me who they are. I was drunk and stupid." "No, you were honest for once." She started crying again. "What can I do to fix this? Please, Damien, I'll do anything." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Nothing. Nothing you can do. We're done. But I love you." "No, you love what I provide. There's a difference." I got up and walked away, leaving her sitting there. But as I reached the stairs, I turned back. "By the way, I called the dealership today. I'm having my name removed from your car loan. You've got until the end of the month to refinance on your own, or they'll repossess it." Her head snapped up. "What? You can't do that. My credit still isn't good enough to qualify on my own. Again, not my problem." "But I need my car for work. How am I supposed to get around?" "Not my problem anymore. Figure it out." Her face crumpled. "Please stop this. I'm begging you. 30 days to move out, 7 days to refinance the car. Those are the only things I'm willing to discuss with you." What I didn't tell her was that I'd already consulted with Steve about the car situation. As a co-signer, I had the right to request removal if the primary borrower was able to refinance. If she couldn't qualify, the lender could demand immediate payment or repossession. I wasn't going to be on the hook for a $45,000 luxury car that she had insisted on leasing despite my objections. 5 days later, I came home to find a moving truck in the driveway and Tiffany's parents helping her load boxes. "I'm leaving today," she said when I walked in. "My parents are helping me move into a new apartment." "Okay," I said, hanging up my keys. "Need help with anything heavy? Really? That's all you have to say to me?" I shrugged. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe that you'll miss me, that you're sorry it ended this way, something." "I'm not sorry it ended. I'm just sorry I didn't see you clearly sooner." Joe walked in, carrying a box labeled kitchen. He gave me a stiff nod, then said to Tiffany, "That's the last of the kitchen stuff. Your mother's doing a final check of the bathroom." Once he was back outside, Tiffany looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I did love you, you know, in my way. Your way wasn't good enough." She reached into her purse and pulled out a check. "Here, my half of the vacation fund. I'm giving it back to you." I took the check and looked at it. "Why?" "Because I need a favor, a big one." She took a deep breath. "The bank won't let me refinance the car. I called everywhere. No one will approve me with my debt ratio. Please don't take your name off the loan just until I can improve my credit." I folded the check and handed it back to her. "Keep it. You're going to need it for a down payment on a much cheaper car. Damien, please, I can't lose my car. I'll lose my job if I can't get to work reliably." "Nope. Not a chance. I made a mistake. One stupid mistake." "No, you showed me who you really are, and I believe you." Her mother walked in then, ending the conversation. An hour later, they were gone. Tiffany left her key on the kitchen counter without another word. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept in my own bed. The next morning, I called my attorney again. "She's out. What's next?" Steve advised me to change the locks immediately and document the condition of the house in case Tiffany tried to claim she'd left personal property behind. I spent the weekend photographing every room, changing every password she might have known, and switching all my accounts to paperless to prevent any mail from accidentally going to her. It's been 6 months since the engagement party, and my life has completely transformed. The business is booming. We landed 2 major commercial contracts that will keep us busy for the next year. I bought out my business partner, Matt, and brought on Drake and Miguel as junior partners instead. Drake had been with me from the beginning, turning down better-paying jobs to help me get started. Miguel had proven himself countless times as the most reliable foreman I'd ever worked with. My brother Tony moved in temporarily after his own divorce. And it's been like reliving our 20s, but with more money and fewer hangovers. The house has returned to being a comfortable place where I can put my feet on the coffee table without hearing about respecting fine furniture. As for Kate, we started dating 4 months ago. It turns out Tiffany's jealousy wasn't completely unfounded. Kate had always been interested but respected boundaries too much to ever cross them. She's the anti-Tiffany, genuinely interested in my work, comfortable in jeans and a t-shirt, and actually thinks it's cool that I build things with my hands. Last weekend she helped me frame out a new deck, showing up in work boots with her own tool belt. Our relationship developed naturally. She doesn't try to change me or apologize for me to her friends, and I don't feel like I need to impress her with expensive gifts or renovations. Tiffany's life went in the opposite direction. The car got repossessed 2 weeks after she moved out, just as I warned her. Her company did a round of layoffs, and despite her confidence that she was too valuable to cut, she was one of the first to go. According to mutual friends, she had to move back in with her parents at 32, which is exactly the kind of thing she used to mock other people for. I didn't take any satisfaction in her downfall. In construction, you learn that karma has a way of catching up without your help. Shoddy work always reveals itself eventually, so does a shoddy character. The final cherry on top came when I ran into her sister Caroline at the grocery store. After awkward small talk, she surprised me by saying, "You dodged a bullet, you know. Tiffany's been dating her boss from the new job, the married one." Mom and Dad are beside themselves. I just nodded and said, "I hope she figures herself out someday." Walking away, I couldn't help but smile a little, not because I wish her ill, I genuinely don't, but because I'm so grateful I overheard her that night. I came so close to legally tying myself to someone who saw me as nothing but a bank account she was embarrassed to be seen with. Then, about 2 weeks ago, something unexpected happened. I was finishing up at our biggest job site when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Joe, Tiffany's dad. "Damien, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but we have a situation." He cleared his throat uncomfortably. "It's about the Wellington Heights project." My blood ran cold. Wellington Heights was a massive commercial development project that my company had bid on last month. Winning it would essentially double our business overnight. "What about it?" I asked cautiously. "I'm on the board that's advising Prescott on contractor selection," Joe said. "Tiffany found out and she's been saying things, suggesting your company isn't financially stable enough for a project this size." "Are you kidding me?" I felt my temper rising for the first time in months. "I'm not condoning it," Joe said quickly. "In fact, I'm calling to warn you. The final meeting is Friday, and I've seen the short list. You're on it, but barely hanging on because of these concerns." I wasn't entirely surprised. Tiffany knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage. She'd picked up enough about my business over 6 years to know which buttons to push. Going after my professional reputation was the one thing that could still get to me. I thanked Joe stiffly and hung up, then immediately called my accountant. We spent the entire night preparing a comprehensive financial portfolio showing not just our stability, but our growth trajectory over the last 5 years. I included bank statements, tax returns, client references, proof of bonding capacity, and cash flow projections. My accountant knew exactly what we needed to showcase. "Your debt-to-income ratio is better than 90% of contractors your size," she pointed out, "and your completion rate on schedule and under budget puts you in the top tier nationally." The next morning, I emailed the complete portfolio directly to Prescott, with a professionally worded letter addressing the concerns head-on. I wrote that while I respected the selection committee's process, I wanted to provide additional documentation to counter any misinformation about my company's financial standing. I requested a formal follow-up meeting to discuss the portfolio in person. 2 hours later, Prescott's assistant called to schedule a meeting for the following afternoon. I spent that night reviewing every detail of the Wellington Heights plans, identifying potential cost-saving measures and efficiency improvements that weren't in my original bid. When you build things for a living, you learn to look at every problem from multiple angles. Sometimes the obvious approach isn't the best one. I found 3 places where alternative materials would save money without sacrificing quality, and a sequencing change that would shave 2 weeks off the timeline. These weren't corners to cut, they were smarter solutions that a less experienced contractor might miss. I showed up 10 minutes early for the meeting in my best suit. Prescott was alone in his office, my portfolio open on his desk, with sections highlighted and flagged. "I appreciate you sending this over," he said without preamble. "Direct and thorough, exactly how I like to do business. I believe in addressing concerns with facts, not rhetoric," I replied. "My company has 0 debt, 18% year-over-year growth for the past 5 years, and enough liquid capital to handle a project twice this size without breaking a sweat. Prescott nodded, studying me. The board had questions about your financial stability. This answers them definitively. He tapped my portfolio. But more importantly, we toured your Riverside project yesterday. Impressive work. The Riverside project was a mid-sized office renovation we had just completed. Nothing flashy but rock-solid craftsmanship with some innovative solutions to a tricky HVAC challenge. It was exactly the kind of work I was most proud of, practical, durable, and smartly executed. We spent the next hour discussing specific aspects of the Wellington Heights project. I laid out my implementation plan, timeline, and the additional cost-saving measures I'd identified. All business, no drama. One more thing, Prescott said as we were wrapping up. I heard there might be some personal factors at play in the board's concerns about your company. I kept my face neutral. My personal life and my business are completely separate, always have been. Good, he nodded. That's what I told the board. I don't care about gossip. I care about who can deliver on time and on budget. 2 days later, I received a call from Prescott himself. We'd won the Wellington Heights contract, a project that would set my company up for years. I immediately called Drake and Miguel into my office to share the news. We'd need to hire at least 6 more guys and invest in additional equipment. They were ecstatic. This was exactly the kind of growth opportunity we'd been working toward. Should we celebrate tonight? Miguel suggested. No, I replied. Let's wait until we break ground. Then we'll celebrate. The following day, Joe called again to congratulate me on landing Wellington Heights. I kept the conversation brief and professional, telling him plainly to keep his daughter away from my business. He sighed and mentioned that he and Kathleen saw things differently now, finding Tiffany's post-breakup behavior illuminating. I didn't care much for their sudden insight after enabling her entitlement her entire life. Joe also noted he'd recused himself from the final vote, assuring me I'd won the contract fairly. Too little, too late. 2 days later, Tiffany texted me about hearing I'd gotten the Wellington contract. I didn't respond. She followed with news about her car being repossessed, losing her apartment, and moving back with her parents while working as an assistant for half her previous salary. When she asked for financial help, I simply replied, no. She pleaded that I must still care because I'm a good person. You're wrong on both counts, I told her calmly. I'm just a glorified handyman, remember? And I stopped caring when I heard what you really thought of me. Her final plea for help was met with my sending her a link to a receptionist job application at one of my clients' businesses. It paid enough for a cheap apartment and a bus pass. That was my only assistance. When she realized that was all I'd offer, I wished her luck and blocked her number for good. The Wellington Heights project breaks ground next week. This morning, I signed the final paperwork for Drake and Miguel's partnership agreements. The company now has 3 equal partners instead of just me. It feels right, spreading both the risk and the rewards. To any guy reading this who suspects his partner sees him as a meal ticket or a project, pay attention to how she talks about you when she thinks you can't hear. That's the unfiltered truth. Everything else is just a performance. I've learned a lot in these months. The most important lesson? Value the people who value your work, not just your wallet. We have a saying, the strength of the foundation determines how tall you can build.